And I started recording. Hello and welcome to We Love the State. This is episode 3. Welcome back to my shitty vocal booth with blankets all over the walls. I'm very poor, so that explains that. Today I've got a good friend of mine. His name is Sterling Reece. He's one of the OG members of the Mises Caucus. And I'm going to let him kind of explain his involvement in that. So take it away, Reece.
All right. So I'm Sterling Reece. And I would say probably around 2017, I believe, Mike Heiss gave me a call or he messaged me on Facebook or something and basically told me what he was planning to do as far as, hey, the Libertarian Party is small, but it's kind of lost its way. And we could possibly have a huge influence on it with a fairly small number of people. It wouldn't be like trying to take over the Republican Party, where you need tons of people and money and, it'd be a super uphill battle. But it basically, I can't remember exactly how he pitched it to me, but he said, you remember that Ron Paul revolution energy, like, why don't we try to bring that back to the Libertarian Party, and just some good messaging. And, let's just try to bring people in and tell them that, hey, we're going to put a new face on the Libertarian Party. We're going to sort of, take it over and just make it better, something that, if you call yourself libertarian, you can be proud to be associated with, even if you're one of the people who doesn't believe in participating in party politics at all, you could at least look at what they're doing and be like, that's all right. That's, like your agorists or something, because liberty it's a multifaceted front that we have. It's not just everybody has to do this one thing, and it's like, I'm not part of the Free State Project or anything like that, but I do like, if they pop up in my Twitter feed or something and they're doing good shit, then it's like, awesome. That's good to see,
Right.
So, and that's pretty much what it came down to. And that was what motivated me about it, not so much like winning elections or anything like that, but just improving the messaging of that was coming out of the party.
Yeah.
So, and I did some little stuff for him. It's funny. I was like one of the original 5 founding members, but it's like, I didn't do as much as a lot of other people, really. So.
Well, I mean, for me, with kind of my political journey, because I'm a recovering leftist, and so whenever I got exposed to libertarianism, it was through the Mises Caucus. It was through listening to Part of the Problem and listening to Dave Smith and being like, whoa, this is like, it all just makes too much sense. My thing is I kept trying to come up with the left-wing counter arguments, and they all just sucked, because I've always considered myself somebody who follows the best argument, and so to me it was always kind of like the Mises Caucus was always a part of that. I probably heard about the Mises Caucus the very first time that I really heard about libertarianism, like the philosophy explained in a way that wasn't stupid. Yeah. And so like to me it was this huge thing, it was like, yeah, I mean, not like huge, but it was like this important thing,
Yeah.
And so it was like when I was at Reno and I got to meet Heiss, and I got to meet Karen and Harlos, and I got to meet all these people and got to see all these people that to me are like almost like mythical people, you know, like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And
Yeah.
it's because they were all centered around a very, very important time in my life where I'm really trying to figure out what the fuck I believe in, and, you know, like, what do I actually stand for, and what are my principles, and so it's just, I mean, it's wild to me that, that even right now I'm talking to one of the original dudes, you know. And not to like throw you up on a pedestal or anything like that. You're still a piece of shit, Sterling. Don't get me wrong.
Good. Let's say my head's big enough. I don't need it getting any bigger.
But I mean, for me, from my perspective, you know, this was such a huge, substantial change in my life that it's just the Mises Caucus has always been this huge thing to me, you know.
Nice.
And so
nice.
it, from your perspective, and I know you and I kind of talked about this a little bit in Reno, but it's got to be fucking crazy to be watching Joe Rogan or watching Timcast and you see Mises
insane.
Caucus pop up on there, you know?
It's insane to me.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's funny because so I started with it in 2017, and I think I kind of hung in there for about a year, but at the time I was working in the oil field, and so it's like I'm having really long hours, and then when I'm home I want to be spending time with my family, and you know, like I just didn't have time for a lot of activism. And so I think it was like about a year later, I just told Mike and the guys, I was like, guys, I got to just step away. You know, I've got too much going on in my life. I just don't have room for this. And then, you know, so I stayed in contact, you know, I'm on social media, so I'm like following everything they're doing, but it is really insane that it has gone as far as it has, you know, and like, you know, I was on the boat at the very beginning, and, you know, who knew where it was going to go, but it's just a testament to the hard work of a lot of people like Mike Heiss, David Hines, Luke Ensor, Whitney Davis, Jeff Douglas, and just a whole host of other people who have done work in the state affiliates. And just like, it is just totally insane to me that when I see this thing, it's like, wow, this really succeeded.
So let me ask you,
and it succeeded despite me not being a huge part of it, which is like wild, right? I was like, well, this is gonna fail if I'm leaving. So, you know, it's hopeless now.
I mean, they definitely didn't have enough bearded dudes, that's for sure.
Yeah, there were so many great beards in Reno. I was like, good Lord.
Dude, so my first Libertarian convention was our state convention back in March, I think. And I walked in there, and maybe 10 or 15 minutes into it, I immediately texted my wife, and I was like, I've heard like 30 chubby bearded dudes talk about how their wife isn't into politics, because I'm a chubby bearded dude whose wife is not into politics at all. And I was like, this is like our Mecca. You know, this is where we all eventually become libertarians.
I'm a chubby bearded dude, and my wife is not into politics at all. Like, she's almost like an accidental agorist, where she just doesn't care about any of it. She doesn't vote. She doesn't, you know, it's just hilarious.
All right. So Sterling, let me ask you this. So for anybody that's listening, on my TikTok channel or anything like that, like I've thrown a couple of things towards the Mises Caucus, as far as like, oh yeah, I went to Reno, I was part of the Mises Caucus, you know, but I haven't really gone into a deep dive as to what distinguishes the Mises Caucus from any other caucus in the party or anything like that. I haven't really gone into detail as to what the Mises Caucus is. So if you would be so kind as to give your sort of elevator pitch for what the Mises Caucus is.
I would say that the Mises, and I speak for basically myself and my own perceptions of it, but for me, the Mises Caucus is a return to hard principles. And my elevator pitch of it is because a lot of the people who don't, or who are libertarian but don't want to participate in the Mises Caucus, come from like either an agorist or a hardcore Rothbardian view, where fuck the state. We're not going to participate in any of this stuff anymore. The Libertarian Party is working within the system, so I just don't want to be a part of that. And I respect that opinion. But my elevator pitch for why it's important is because I think we've given too much ground on language over the history. And the simple matter of the fact is that if you ask a person on the street about a libertarian, or what is a libertarian, who is a libertarian, they're probably going to tell you something like Gary Johnson,
right?
Or, oh, they heard about this one guy and he like ran for office locally or something, and he was a Libertarian Party guy. It's gonna come down to a Libertarian Party person.
Yeah.
Like the chances of, even though names like Tom Woods and Dave Smith and whoever are big in our world, to the man on the street, if you ask them what a libertarian is, they're gonna default to the party.
Yeah.
And whether that's unfortunate or not, it's just simply reality. And so if the party is putting out terrible messaging, just being stupid and tone deaf, well, that just hurts all of us, even if we aren't participating in it. And so my elevator pitch is, listen, even if you don't care about elections are stupid, voting's stupid, all this stuff, you should at least care that something which holds the same name as your philosophy is at least holding up its flank.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that, it's like, I don't want to live in a world where I'm like, oh, I'm a libertarian, and someone's thinking about some dopey thing that Gary Johnson said or they saw on the LP National Twitter and be like, oh, so you believe this? It's, I mean, as a simple matter of convenience, you're eliminating having to like, no, actually that's big L libertarian and I'm a small L libertarian.
Yeah.
Having to just go through this whole thing, it would just be great if the Libertarian Party was holding up its flank to where if I say to someone on the street who has no idea that I'm a libertarian, they're not going to remember some shitty messaging and be like, oh, so you believe this.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, my, before I started listening to Part of the Problem, before I really had, cause like, I don't really know how to explain it perfectly, but like most people they just get terrible explanations for what libertarianism is. It's either the Republican who wants to smoke weed or the Democrat who wants a gun, and it's like, I mean, my thing, some people really liked Gary Johnson, but I get so mad whenever I think about Gary Johnson, and I wasn't a libertarian during Gary Johnson's campaign, so I don't even know if I'm allowed to get mad, but I think about his campaign and I'm like, man, he really looked like a fucking doofus, Yeah. And it's like, sure, he was fine with the whole, the Darryl Perry, the whole toaster license thing, and he's like, no, I think a driver's license is fine. Like, I guess that wasn't a bad answer, or that was a reasonable answer, but I don't know. I think about his campaign and I get so mad because I'm like, you're taking the great. I'm gonna steal this from Dave Smith, but you're taking the greatest political philosophy ever devised by man, and you're just shitting on it. You're making it look like a joke, and so. I get so angry when I think about Gary Johnson, and I get equally as mad whenever I think about the fucking dude that was stripping on stage, the lady who was like, we should make Dobby the elf our mascot, or Darryl Perry. I just get so mad because I'm like, you guys make us look like a joke,
Yeah.
And I remember I pulled up some video on YouTube. And I was explaining the Rena reset to my wife, and she was like, who are these people that you're talking about? She was talking about like the authority in the party before the Rena reset. So I was like, let me show you. I pull up this video. It showed the Dobby lady the dude stripping on stage, the toast your damn toaster moment or whatever, the driver's license, that like it showed all of these really, really embarrassing moments in one clip. And I was like, all of that really stupid shit you just saw? She's like, yeah. I was like, we're getting rid of the people that allowed that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, oh, okay. And
yeah.
So,
yeah, I think in a lot of ways that the Libertarian Party can become a landing place for people who they kind of want to be a big deal,
mm-hmm.
but they would have no place in the Democrat or Republican parties simply because they're too big, and it's almost like the Libertarian Party is like Bush League politics in a way, where, like the person who's going to chair a Republican National Party or a Democrat National Party, like that's going to be a pretty polished person,
mm-hmm.
And all the officers, even state affiliates, are going to be pretty polished people who have it together. And the Libertarian Party, it's like we're like a militia in the Continental Army,
mm-hmm.
where it's like we're not that good.
Yeah.
We're just kind of like ramshackle, thrown together, like the 20 people in your entire state who care enough to show up to a convention,
mm-hmm.
or whatever, like. And I'm not even saying that as a derogatory thing. It's just the truth that like you're pulling from a smaller pool of people,
mm-hmm.
and so you're just not going to have like the depth of talent.
Yeah.
But I think it should be where, we're looking at it like, okay, we're a small, conference program now, but we've got big dreams, and you're not going to get to that next level by just sort of having a lackadaisical attitude and just like, oh, that's how we are when people are just fucking up and being idiots and not doing what they're supposed to do and just bad messaging, all this stuff. It's like if you want to play in the big leagues and make a difference, like you're going to have to buckle down. And, the Gary Johnson campaign is a classic example of this, where, like, it's like, dude, you're on the big stage now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you got picked up to play for a professional sports team and you were just like, well, I'm good enough, so whatever, I'm not going to train, or like, no, you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And so for someone to go up for a presidential campaign and just, and I don't even hate Gary Johnson, like I don't, but it's like, man, you got to take it seriously.
Yeah.
You got to hit the books a little.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree.
Like you have to have answers for things,
mm-hmm.
and just, we know you're not going to get elected, but my God, don't make us look stupid.
Well, I mean, that reminds me of his Aleppo moment. And
yeah,
it's like, first of all, you know how many people knew what Aleppo was? There was one person, this is what I think. There was one person in the entire goddamn United States who knew what Aleppo was, and it was the person that asked him about that. All right.
Yeah.
I don't fault,
you know what? I agree with you on that. I don't fault him for that because how hard would it have been to ask him, like, hey, what's going on with Syria?
Right.
Syria.
Right.
Not a fucking town in Syria.
Yeah. Well, okay. Let me put it to you this way. So, I mean, we're the anti-war party. We're against government force party and all that stuff. That's fine. But if you're running for the highest office in the land, I think you should have known about Aleppo.
Mm-hmm.
I don't fault you or me or any random person on the street for not knowing what the hell Aleppo is. But
mm-hmm.
I do fault the guy running for the highest office in the land,
Yeah.
Because guess what?
Yeah,
If
like there's a definitely an obligation there.
Yeah.
But I still that's kind of a 50-50 for me, where it's like, yeah, that was kind of a intentional gotcha.
Yeah.
Like they could have just asked him, like, what do you think about Syria?
Mm-hmm.
Not this one specific town in Syria.
Okay, that's a good point.
But at the same time, like you shouldn't be able to be broadsided by those things and just, taken by surprise by, because I mean that Aleppo was in the news a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know.
I
also could be being
not knowing who Rothbard is and just
yeah.
all the other stuff. Like, dude, or come on, like, you know,
Yeah.
It's like you just got picked up to play on the Yankees, and you're like, who did Babe Ruth play for again? Like, dude, no, don't do that. Oh, no.
Babe Ruth. I love candy bars.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, at least when we get Dave Smith in office, at least he will be funny intentionally.
Oh, dude. That guy would be a wrecking ball on a campaign.
On a debate stage. Dude. That's what I would kill. I would sell one of my children into slavery to see Dave Smith on a debate stage with fucking I like to see him with anybody, fucking anybody. It like, especially if they're Republican or Democrat, like establishment, like the fucking swamp people. Like I would kill to see him go like head to head against like Hillary Clinton or
dude, it would be nothing but a smoke show.
Yeah.
I mean, those people just, their entire rhetoric isn't ready for what a sharp libertarian can bring.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it would just be like half an hour in, like, dude, he's dead. Just stop. like, stop desecrating his corpse.
That war criminal has a family, dude. Come on.
Yeah. They're starting to feel bad for him.
Stop poking holes.
Jeez, he doesn't deserve that.
Stop poking holes in Dick Cheney's dead body. Stop it.
Yeah. Oh my God.
All right. So I'm going to ask you a very generic question.
Okay.
So how did you find your way into the Libertarian Party or into libertarianism in general?
So I was born in 1980,
mm-hmm.
and my parents were hardcore Reaganites.
Mm-hmm. To anybody listening, 1980 was approximately 60 years ago.
Yeah, that's about right. So back then there was, and I guess there still is to this day, there was like this really strong vein of liberty that runs through conservatism
mm-hmm.
as a philosophy. And obviously we all know how it falls apart in specific areas. But I remember my mom got me a copy of The Road to Serfdom when I was very young.
Mm-hmm.
So I read that. And then later in life, I remember reading Milton Friedman, Capitalism and Freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And it was still very much like kind of a typical conservative where, oh, the government should be out of this, but oh man, we need the government over here for,
for sure,
military and border police and everything else. And
yeah.
And it wasn't until 2008, and the Iraq War did not sour me on Republicans, to my shame, but the bank bailouts did.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time I was actually going to college and I was studying economics, and the bank bailouts sent me through the freaking roof. And I just remembered, for me, that was it.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what a Republican is, but I know I'm not that.
Yeah.
And so I just started kind of groping around, and I would just read whatever sounded good. And I remember I was on Facebook, and I just liked a bunch of libertarian pages because I was like, you know what, I don't know what all this Republican stuff's about. I don't know what libertarian's about, but I'll at least check them out.
Yeah.
And I just started getting introduced to like Rothbard and Mises, and I was still like, well, what if warlords took over guy for like a long time, until finally someone said, like, dude, just read For a New Liberty.
Mm-hmm.
Just read that. And
that's
I was like,
what I'm
fine,
going through right now is For a New Liberty.
And I just remember, because I was the guy, I was like, you told me to read a book, I'd read the book,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And all these people were like, read Rothbard, read For New Liberty, da da da. And I read it, and it was over.
Yeah.
Like, because I was always like the single issue guy. Like I lost on the drug war. I was like, okay, fine, the drug war is fine, but all these other things, they're still in play.
Uh-huh.
But For New Liberty was just like, it went through my brain with a death squad and like removed all the pockets of resistance that were left.
Rothbard's got a nasty habit of doing that, because it's so it's kind of similar with me. Like I like my thing is I was this sort of politically homeless person for a little bit, and then I always loved comedy, and I kept hearing about this show called Legion of Skanks, so I started listening to Legion of Skanks, and I always referred to Dave Smith as the political guy. And so whenever I started feeling like a craving to get into politics again, I was like, well, I'll give this guy's show a try, you know, because in my mind I was thinking like he's probably like a down-to-earth lefty, you know, he's like a down-to-earth liberal or whatever. And I remember playing that first episode, and he's like, no, I'm a libertarian. And I was like, the fuck? Libertarian? I was like, who the hell's a libertarian? And so I started listening more and more and more. And by the end, I finished that first episode. I was like, holy shit, I think I'm a libertarian, you know?
Yeah.
I was still like, I don't know. I still wasn't like 100% serious about it. But then I read Anatomy of the State by Rothbard. And once, like, I know you and I talked about this a little bit, but reading Anatomy of the State is, first of all, I think it's one of the most brilliant pieces of literature out there, because it describes the state in purely objective terms. You know, it's explaining what the state is from the perspective of somebody who's never heard of the state, you know, and he only uses objective terms. He never puts opinion in there. It's just straight facts. And I was listening to it, and that was the point where I was like, there is no going back after I read that. There's no going back and being like, well, you know, I've got these, you know, liberty principles, but I'll fit in more with no, I can't go back to Republicans. I can't go back to Democrats. I can't go back to any of that stuff after reading Rothbard, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, I think Dave Smith turned me into a libertarian. Rothbard turned me into a fucking anarchist, you know?
Yeah.
And Anatomy of the State was the thing that did it. I was like, this thing is evil, you know?
Yeah. I think I was already what I would call an ANCAP when I read Anatomy of the State, and it still stands out to me as one of his most important works. You know, because
it's chilling. It's almost like reading a short horror story or something like that. Like I was listening to it, I was like, this sounds like some shit Stephen King would write, and I'm a huge Stephen King fan, you know. And so I was just listening to it, and it was chilling, you know. And like I don't know, I cannot say enough good things about Anatomy of the State. If you're listening, you have to go read Anatomy of the State.
It's one of 3 books that I always tell people that, you know, in under 400 pages total, you can get the whole package. And that is The Law by Bastiat, Anatomy of the State by Rothbard, and Economic Calculation in the Socialist Commonwealth by Mises. And, you know, you read those, it's over. There's no coming back from it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Anatomy of the State is essentially the red-pilled status, you know, where it's like anytime you're thinking about, well, should the government do this, you're asking, well, should I hope that a gang of thieves will care enough about me to do all these great things for me?
Yeah.
And the question answers itself.
Yep. You're absolutely right. Rothbard, man, was a fucking psycho. That's crazy.
I know, dude. Can you imagine if he was still around and had a Twitter?
Oh my God, that would be incredible. Oh man. Going on what Justin Moss said at the Reno convention, I want to know what Mises would be like if he was still alive. I want to know what he would think about the Libertarian Party and the Mises Caucus and just the state.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. That
would be interesting. Because he was kind of he was more of your classical liberal. He was not an anarchist. But he was also writing at an older time when people who called themselves anarchists were typically socialists / communists.
Right.
So the word itself kind of had different connotations.
Right.
It's just like nowadays, if you call someone a liberal in the United States, that has a very specific connotation.
Yeah.
And it's completely different from what it would mean if you were calling someone in the United States a liberal 150 years ago.
Yeah. Or
And
even,
so,
even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really. Yeah. But so there is that with Mises. But I think even if we translate for today, he was still not an anarchist. He did not believe that there was zero role for government.
Mm-hmm. Is he more like a night watchman guy? Like they can control the borders. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. That's what I thought was kind of funny about Justin Amash's sort of okey doke that he pulled on a lot of us at the convention, because like he didn't even pick the worst things that Mises had to say that would be like the most distasteful to a modern audience out of that book. But he did. I thought it was a really good point that he made, that like, look, we can't be so purist that we're like kicking everybody out of libertarianism.
Yeah.
But just for a few bad opinions.
That's the crazy thing to me, is that never once did I ever hear anybody talk about like purging or anything like that. That like that's something that was put onto us by other people. But the other thing is when, and even Justin Amash said this during his Reason interview, where he was talking, he's like, I read some Mises quotes and I don't know, I don't want to misquote them or anything, but people have made it sound like there were scores upon scores of mecox that were like, boo, boo, that were like going, and you watch the video and there's like two dudes. There's like two dudes who are like, boo, and that's it.
Yeah. But in fairness, if you are a Rothbardian ANCAP, there's stuff to boo about Mises. I mean, you're not booing the guy. You're not like, fuck him forever.
Yeah.
But you're like, there's all sorts of stuff that if you wanted to read it to left libertarians, or you're more like right-leaning libertarians, there's tons of stuff in Mises and Rothbard that they could be like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Mises,
also
Mises
like
says in liberalism, that freedom of movement is a right. And so given that is a very loaded topic, and he goes into it further. He's not just like, boom, and, fight amongst yourselves. But just because that is a very contentious issue today, you'd find a lot of people who would be like, nah, I don't think about that,
Yeah.
But, he also ranges fascism against communism, and says that, and in the same passage, he says that fascism is evil several times. But then he does say that, basically the world owes fascism a debt for at least protecting them from communism. And, and that's been used against Mises by people of the sort of like lefty leaning, but in the libertarian sphere, to say, well, look at Mises, what a piece of crap he is, or, whatever. But
that sounds more thought exercisey to me than anything.
Well, yeah, he's basically just saying like, look, if you lived in Germany or Italy at this time, you basically had your choice between fascism and communism. And after we've seen what communism turned out to be, because I think he wrote liberalism it was like the late 40s. Yeah. So, communism had already racked up a death toll that was never going to be touched, and so he was like, looking at it like, well, I guess if you had to choose one or the other, like, thank God the fascists fought off the communists, right? So
yeah, looking at it in the context of the time, you can see how that quote makes sense,
yeah. So, but it's like, we're our society, we're like, no, just whittle it down to the 7 words that look the worst.
Yeah.
And then just put those up on a billboard.
So basically, listeners, what we're saying is that Sterling and I, as libertarians, very pro-fascism.
Yeah, if you take nothing else away from what I've said.
Make sure that's the sticking point.
Yeah.
See, here's the difference between this show and part of the problem is that I don't think anybody's going to listen to this and by the end of it be like, I'm a libertarian. I think you're going to be like,
yeah,
I don't know about these guys.
That and they're just not brave enough to bold-faced, advocate for fascism.
Exactly.
So,
Not like we are.
no, correct.
Probably don't have beards either because they're gay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Sterling, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to wrap things up.
Absolutely, man. It was great. I had a great time.
So did I. I'm definitely going to have you on again. Sterling, do you want people to be able to find you? And if so, where?
I go by Chad Wojak IRL everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm mainly on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, kinda.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to hit me up, Chad Wojak IRL on Twitter. My DMs are open, so
slide right in.
Exactly.
DMs are open and they're lubed up.
Yeah.
All right.
Just know that whatever pictures you send me, I will send you of me. So
I can confirm this. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am Andy Coons, your wonderful host. You can find me on Twitter at Andy_Coons. That's KOONS. You can find me on TikTok at Andy Coons. Thank you so much for listening, watching, whatever it is that you're doing. Hell, I don't know. I'm always bad at ending these things. So, Sterling, thanks for being here. Have a great night. I'll talk to you guys next week.